Hi guys, here we are, our last video for the year, hallelujah, and it is over mammals. So this is the end of chapter 19, and you guys are super familiar with mammals for the most part. You scientifically are classified as a mammal. So some of the things that we're going to talk about today are really describing you, and some are going to be way far removed from what you know. So when you classify mammals, there are all different ways to do that. And so I followed along with what your book has done. And there are, let's see, I believe 13 groups that they have put them into. So I've got them listed kind of in order that the book has them. And I put pictures, or I tried to put pictures with each so you can kind of see what I'm talking about if you don't know what they are. So here we go, starting off with the carnivores. Carnivores are meat eaters, as their name implies. They are known for their very large canine teeth. So there, I have up there a big white tiger showing off his very long, sharp canine teeth. They can be very large animals like that tiger. Carnivores can be relatively small, like your cat at home. They can be seals. They can be all kinds of animals. So it really more goes down to kind of their eating habits. The next one is a monotreme. This one is kind of known for being the only mammal to lay eggs. There is the platypus there, which you are probably familiar with if you watch Phineas and Ferb. And then they the echidnas are another type of monotreme. The next one are the lagomorphs. That is not something that we normally call these animals. We would call them rabbits. Maybe a hare, which is just a larger rabbit, or even a pika, which is like a little tiny rabbit with little ears. They're herbivores. They are known for their large incisors, which are like their front teeth. And those teeth are used almost continuously. They eat all the time, and those teeth grow continuously because otherwise they would wear them down to nubs as much as they eat. The next picture is a shrew-like mammal, and that is a mole. Shrews look very much like moles. They all live underground for the majority of their life, so notice that this one doesn't really seem to have eyes. They eat insects, they eat other small arthropods, anything that's underground. They generally are known to people as kind of pests. They mess up your yard, those kinds of things, but we really don't have much contact or use for them. The next picture is of a bat. These are the only mammals that consistently fly as a group. They eat a wide range of things depending on the species. Most of them that we are aware of eat insects. There are fruit-eating bats. There are also bats that are vampire bats that do drink the blood of other mammals. So they get that kind of reputation, but for the most part, they're very harmless. All right, here is our next set of mammals, starting with the rodents. Rodents, I have them listed up there as herbivores. They actually will probably eat anything. They are very much like scavengers. So whatever they come across, they will eat, but they are always chewing. They have very large incisors. The continuous growth of those teeth is something that almost forces them to continue eating so that the teeth themselves don't grow too long. As an animal group, they are considered pests. They can be destructive. They can destroy and gnaw through wood and other structures. They are just not something people really want to have around. All right, so our next one, those are the odd-toed ungulates. These are herbivores. They are hoofed animals. As you see, there's a paint pony, a horse, and they have 1 or 3 toes. So the hoof is not the toe. The hoof is more like a really thick fingernail, but they do actually have toes up under there. Excuse me, and these odd-toed ones, the horses, of course, are a big group, so that would, of course, include animals like zebras, but it also would include rhinoceros and a tapir. So they're, again, a very broad group. Then we have the even-toed ungulates, again, herbivores. I've got a cute little cow there. They have 2 or 4 toes. These tend to be animals that we also might classify as ruminates. Cows, of course, deer, moose, elk, all those guys fall into this group. And they are sometimes known for having multiple stomachs. And we'll talk more about that later when we talk about digestion, but they tend to be cud chewers. And then the last group that I have on this page is odd, and it's odd mammals. And these, again, are mostly herbivores, so they are mostly eating plant materials. The animals in this group include the sloth that you see on the page, but that also includes armadillos, anteaters, kind of the oddballs, not really animals that fit in anywhere else. And they don't necessarily fit with each other, but they do, as a group, tend to have unusual joint structures. And so that's kind of how they end up. They're kind of the junk drawer of the mammal classification. Okay, here is our last group. The sea cows, we will start with them. They are the manatees, and they are aquatic herbivores. They are grazers. They eat algae and seaweed, any type of plant material that they can find. They live in shallow waters on the coast usually. We see them in the US on the coast of Florida. They do have to breathe oxygen, so they stay near the surface. They tend to be considered very gentle animals. They are not aggressive in any way and are very comfortable around people. Then we have the marsupials. These again are herbivores. They are known for having offspring that develop in their mother's pouch. So our picture there, we have a little kangaroo and his mom. They are, we'll talk about them later because they are a pretty distinctive group because of reproduction. Then we have the simians and the apes. So there's a picture of a chimpanzee. These are omnivores that prefer to live up in the trees or spend a lot of time in the trees. They eat plants, fruits, vegetables. They will eat other small animals if possible. As a group, they tend to be considered one of the more intelligent mammals because of their brain size. Then the elephants, the trunked animals. These again are herbivores, so they eat leaves and grasses. They are known, of course, for their elongated nose and their long upper lip. They're very dextile with that nose, with their trunk. They can grasp and move and hold things. The picture there, you see the mother is putting food into her mouth and the baby is reaching up for some leaves. And then our last group are the aquatic mammals. These are omnivores, depending on the species. They eat kind of whatever they can get their mouths on. They, again, have to live in water, but do breathe air, so they will have to come up to the surface on occasion. These are, in general, considered to be highly intelligent animals. They are, in some cases, known for being very curious and very comfortable around people, very playful. And those that live in groups tend to be very social and very vocal with each other. Okay, so now some structures that are unique to mammals or that are just a little bit different. First of all, mammals have hair. You are, again, familiar with this because you probably have come in contact with a dog or a cat or some other mammal. Now, most mammals have 2 layers of hair. His hair is made up of keratin, so it's a similar structure to your fingernails, but a different arrangement, so that gives it its flexibility. And it is there to hold in heat. So remember, mammals are endothermic, so they are producing their own heat internally, and they want to keep that heat in, and so the hair does that. The 2 layers are similar to the feather layers in birds. You have an outer layer that is usually a little bit different texture, and then a closer layer to the skin that is usually softer and fluffier, and so that holds the heat in. Some animals have a layer of blubber, and this is just an extra layer of fat that is under the skin. It helps hold in extra heat. Animals that live in much colder areas tend to have blubber. Whales that spend their time up far north have blubber. Polar bears have blubber. All those kind of cold weather animals. Now, on the other hand, sometimes that hair holds in too much heat. And so in order to get rid of the excess heat, you will see many animals pant, and they are panting to release this excess heat. The air that they are releasing is coming internally, and so it can pick up the heat and move some of that out. Some animals have, I think your book mentions, some fox species have very large ears, and those ears have lots of blood veins in them, blood vessels, and so this is carrying the heat out of the body or close to the surface to get rid of some of that heat. All right, so now brain capacity. Comparatively to the other animals, mammals have large brains, and so this is mostly because they spend so much time looking for food. They need to have good senses, good awareness of their environment. And in particular, mammals are known for having a very good sense of smell and a very good sense of hearing. And a lot of that has to do with just the size of their brain. Some animals are also able to use tools to solve problems, to manipulate their environment in some way. All right, now sight. Mammals don't see as well as most birds because usually they are closer to their prey if they are hunters, but some do see better at night. And so this has to do with the structure of the eyes internally, the different receptors, the rods and the cones. We, as people, don't see as many colors as birds do, but we see more than most mammals. Most mammals do just see black and white. Now, as far as eye placement goes, this is another big one that can kind of give you a clue as to what that animal does. Herbivores, who are normally considered prey, have eyes on the sides of their heads. This is so they have a more wide-ranging view of their surroundings. They could see a predator coming more quickly. Carnivores, on the other hand, are predators, and so they tend to have eyes in the front of their head, so always looking forward. It gives them better depth perception and gives them just a better ability to judge distances, how far they are from their prey. Okay, so now digestion. So I got a little wordy on this page, I'm not gonna lie, but it's you know, pretty good stuff to know. So first off, food enters through the mouth, which obviously makes sense, and is chewed. Most mammals have teeth that are very specialized to their diets. The carnivores that we talked about, their sharp canine teeth for grasping and tearing. Animals like horses have incisors that are very flat and able to snip off or tear off small pieces of grass. And so you can kind of judge what an animal eats based on its teeth. Once they get the food in, it moves down into their stomach through the esophagus. It should sound familiar, just like the birds. Now, once in the stomach, that is where chemical digestion takes place. So stomach acids are added in. The stomach is muscular, so it can move the food around. In some animals, which I mentioned earlier, called the ruminates, they do have multiple stomachs. And so these ruminates are animals like cows or deer. They tend to chew their food multiple times. And so the second time they chew their food, we often call that cud. They're chewing their cud. And this second chewing helps to farther break down the cell walls of the plant material that they are chewing so that they can get all the nutrients possible out of it. Now, once the food is through the stomach, it goes into the small intestine. Nutrients are absorbed here. This goes into the bloodstream. Anything that is not absorbed moves into the cecum. Most mammals have a cecum. In some, it's barely used. In some, it's quite large. And this is where further digestion takes place, and this is a kind of a little pocket of bacteria, and the food is digested there and also absorbed. And so the picture that I have over here, the one on the left is a person. So again, remember, you're not an animal, but you're classified as a mammal. And then next to it, we have a rabbit, and this is the cecum. So here's the rabbit cecum. 3% cecum, teeny tiny. A lot of it has to do with what they're eating. Animals that eat grasses tend to have a much larger cecum. Again, that is because to get the nutrients out of a plant, you have to be able to break down the cell wall. And remember, that cell wall is very tough, has cellulose in it, and so a bigger cecum is usually an indication that this is a grass eater. So moving on from there, so once everything is digested, the food moves into the large intestine, water is absorbed, and then that solid waste is released through the anus. Now, mammals also produce liquid waste, and this liquid waste comes out of the blood. It's filtered by the kidneys, it's stored in the bladder for a time, and then is released through the urethra as urine. Urine is in large part uric acid, which is a substance that your body just can't process, or the mammal body can't process, and so you have to get rid of it. Okay, so now circulation and respiration, they go together. They both have to do with carrying stuff throughout the body and what is being carried. So mammals have 4 chambered hearts. They have a closed respiratory system, which means arteries and veins, and that blood carries nutrients, waste products, oxygen, carbon dioxide. Mammals, as a rule, have red blood because the blood contains a molecule called hemoglobin. Hemoglobin has lots of iron in it, and that's where the red color actually comes from, but its job is to bind with oxygen, and that's how it gets through the blood vessels into the cells. Now, the heart works very closely with the lungs, and it is helping to move oxygen in to the body and carbon dioxide out. That's the gas waste that you are exhaling. With each heartbeat, the blood is pushed through the body, and with each breath, oxygen and CO2 are exchanged. Mammals are, I believe, the first animal that we've talked about that have a diaphragm, and this is a muscle that is right below your lungs, and it works to contract and it relaxes, and this helps your lungs to expand and contract for air to come in or air to move out. Those of you who are singers, Ms. Shaw or some other choir teacher may have talked to you about kind of practicing working with your diaphragm. Now, most mammals also have a larynx, which is we would call it a voice box, and as air passes through it, it has enough of a shape to it, especially specialized shapes for those who make specialized sounds, and so as the air moves through, sounds are made. For people, we add in the ability to move our lips and to change the shape of our mouths to make even more specific sounds. Okay, so now mammal reproduction. So mammals get their name from structures called mammary glands, and this is the structure that produces milk to feed offspring. So that's where that comes from. Mammals are very conscientious in their parenting. They are going to care for their young much longer than any other species that we have talked about so far. And there are 3 main groups, and as far as reproduction goes, and they all tend to do with how the offspring is nourished. So first off, most mammals are viviparous, which means they give birth to live young. And after fertilization, which is always internal, the embryo is nourished by an egg yolk until the in a group called the eutherians, here's that word right there, until that embryo attaches in its mother's uterus. Once the embryo is attached, the placenta develops around, and that placenta is responsible for supplying nutrients and oxygen. It's responsible for removing wastes. Now, these eutherians have much longer gestation periods. Gestation is the time during which the embryo develops into an organism that could survive. And so they have long gestation periods. Of course, people, again, you're not an animal, but you are a mammal scientifically, have a gestation period of 9 months. Some elephants, I believe the gestation period is almost 2 years. Yikes. For smaller mammals, it can be just a matter of weeks. So during that time, the offspring is developing all of the systems that it needs. Hair can be growing on some, and essentially when they are born, they are able to survive. Those of you who have kind of grown up out in the country, most likely you have seen a young baby calf, and they can walk the day that they are born. They get right up and go. So they're well developed at birth. Marsupials, on the other hand, give birth within a few weeks, usually after fertilization, and it happens as soon as the egg yolk is gone. As soon as the nourishment is gone, the offspring is born, and then it crawls into the mother's pouch. And in the mother's pouch, it is nourished by mammary glands and continues to develop there. They are born, marsupials are born very, very underdeveloped. Like, you probably, again, may have seen a picture of a very small, like a baby kangaroo, and they don't look like a real kangaroo. They have no hair. In some cases, they don't have legs. They are very, very underdeveloped, and then they remain in the mother's pouch for a very long time while they grow again to a state that can they can stay alive. Monotremes are kind of the weird ones in this group. They do not give birth to live young. They actually lay eggs. And they lay eggs fairly quickly after fertilization. Most of them will either carry the eggs in a pouch or basically have a nest that they guard. And then once the eggs hatch, they do nourish them. They do feed them milk, and then raise them essentially like all other mammals do. Last thing, so mammals in the environment. First off, mammals live in just about every environment that there is, many different habitats because of their abilities to adapt, first of all, but also because of the variety of sizes and body structures. So they live all kinds of places. They are every part or every level of the food chain, from the very bottom to the tippy top, and everywhere in between. For people, we have lots of interaction with animals. Some cases it's just, your pet, but in other cases they work for us. They are sometimes called beasts of burden because they carry things, they carry us. We use them for help, like a seeing eye dog. We can train them to do all kinds of different tasks for us. And so there's lots of interaction. In some cases, this is a good thing. Some mammals live and thrive near people, even though they're considered wild animals. Your book mentions bobcats, mentions coyotes. Some bears tend to live very near cities or towns and act as scavengers, and don't seem too bothered by people. Others really isolate themselves from humans, are very, very shy, and not seen very often. We also rely a lot on animals as a food source. Most of us eat a lot of beef over our lifetimes, and so it is a big industry. Also, the hunting industry, because it is one, provides us with food, but also like an entertainment source in some ways, and so we are reliant on them for that. We have kind of a rough past with some of the larger carnivores in particular. We, as people, have tended to harm their populations, particularly if we feel that they will harm us or if they will harm livestock. Your book, I believe, mentions the fact that for years and years and years, the farm areas and the places around the Yellowstone did not see wolves for a very long time because they had hunted them because they were killing off their livestock, and they're reintroducing these wolves. And that is a pretty big deal because the wolves help maintain other animal populations. And so we're still kind of trying to work out how to live with some of these larger carnivores. Some animals, some populations we have overhunted. The buffalo bison population is a well-documented case of humans overhunting those animals. Beavers, I believe, are one that have been overhunted for their pelts. And so we're still working it out as far as how to really properly deal with these mammals, but we're figuring it out. So anyway, let me know if you have questions, and I will talk to you later.